is up, guys? Andrew Neal here with another video. My first about vintage vinyl records, and we're going to review them and talk about them. And, I'll show you my collection, which is, it varies depending on the album. This one is the Hollies Evolution. One of my favorite albums ever, and this is the UK pressing. I'll show you first. Carl Ferris did the cover, and super underrated cover. I mean, I'm surprised people don't talk about it more as far as 60s album cover. It's one of the best. And here's the album. It's in great shape. I mean, it's a pretty nice shape. I'd say, very good, excellent shape. And a Parlophone. This is a stereo pressing here. So I have the US as well. So both are stereo. I want to get the mono. Hear how they sound. This is the US cover. So it varies in different track listing. Got Carrie Ann on here. And here's the album. Side 1, and I'll show you side 2 here. But this album, again, the Epic records compared to Parlophone. Epic certainly, I've heard people say bastardized. They did a lot of editing and cut the song listing down. So that's unfortunate. But the UK version is definitely my preference. And there it is again, lovely cover. And just the Hollies font, rainbow font, right there. I love that. And 12 incredible tracks. We're going to talk about them here and talk about the 67 started to get heavier. You had the era of freak beat music was like, I don't even know if that was a term back then. I think some people have said, well, it wasn't a term back then. It was something that came up later as a term for all this guitar, fuzz guitar kind of sound. A lot of UK bands kind of had that sound. I mean, you're talking 66 around the time. This is 67 though. So we're talking Sgt. Pepper's, but before that, that was, of course, that's the album, okay? I mean, that's what everyone talks about. But you also have Jimi Hendrix, Our Experience that year but earlier in the year, The Byrds, Younger Than Yesterday. A great album. Got a mix of folk, psychedelia on there. The Monkees' Headquarters is talked about, and Pisces Aquarius, of course. Both are talked about. You got Cream's efforts, Disraeli Gears, and you have Donovan's albums. I mean, Where You Love Like Heaven. And speaking of Where You Love Like Heaven and Our Experience, Carl Ferris did those covers, and Hendrix was influenced by the Hollies Evolution covers. So there's a tidbit there. You had the Doors' first album. So there were a lot of albums that get a lot of attention, but for some reason, the Hollies albums, Evolution and then Butterfly later in the year, don't get that kind of attention, which is a damn shame, obviously, because those albums are criminally underrated. Really, some of the best of '67. Very psychedelic, but also it's a mix. Like there's a mix on. If we're talking about just Evolution here, which we are. We're talking some psychedelia, some freak beat kind of sounds, fuzz guitar, on Have You Ever Loved Somebody, obviously. But just songs with sexual themes, songs with heartbroken themes, with, love, like You Need Love, and we're going to break the songs down, but this is kind of an overview. And you got some whimsical songs like, Ye Old Toffee Shop, and, stuff like that. And then you got Water on the Brain, is kind of an unusual song. So there's a lot of different stuff. So this was at the same time, pretty much, of course, it was early 1967 that the Beatles were recording Sgt. Pepper's. So yeah, the 11th of January 1967, the Hollies went into Abbey Road for the first sessions of that album. This album, Evolution, of course. And the Beatles had already started Strawberry Fields, I think, late '66, so they had already started. But of course, Sgt. Pepper did not have Strawberry Fields Forever or Penny Lane, so that was the single. I mean, I think they initially thought about putting that out. Sgt. Pepper didn't happen, but because they didn't singles on albums, that wasn't a thing really much in the UK back in the day, obviously. But January, When Your Lights Turn On, Have You Ever Loved Somebody, and you have the Fuzzbox was being used by Tony Hicks for this song, and the song is one of the best on the album. Super underrated. Could have been a single. I saw Bernie Calvert, a quote from him from I think the 2000s saying, well, that could have been a single. And that would have been a very, very good single to choose, and a heavier sound for the Hollies. And there's some heavier sounds on this album, Evolution. Obviously, yeah, and When Your Lights Turned On from this session as well. And this song has some really, edgy lyrics, some lyrics that are kind of, I would say, just, there's a lot of those themes where they're questioning. There's questioning going on. There's like maybe in some infidelity going on. Some sexual themes. I mean, there's a lot going on in this album with the themes, and you have All the World Is Love here as well on this at that January 11th session. And that song, it was the B-side of On a Carousel. So it started work on that on the 11th of January. And this is really their true first, again, delve into psychedelia, very trippy lyrics. Graham Nash was obviously the driving force behind this album and behind a lot of the songs for this album. So, this song was the B-side again and was quite influential. A lot of speculation. All the World Is Love, then you have All You Need Is Love later by the Beatles about half a year later. We'll never know for sure, but there's people that say, well, is that where Lennon, did he get that, from the Hollies? I don't know. Sort of the name is similar. Who knows exactly, but there was some cross-pollination going on between, as is one way to put it, is one way I've seen put it by these bands being in the same studio and all that. And we mentioned earlier other albums going at the time. You can't go without mentioning the Stones' efforts and obviously Between the Buttons and Satanic Majesties, of course, are also albums that are talked about a lot. So I wanted to interject that. But so you had those songs on January 11th. When Your Lights Turn On, Have You Ever Loved Somebody, All the World Is Love started, and throughout these sessions, even with the start dates, they sometimes did overdubs on later dates, so we'll talk about that. 13th of January was a big one. On a Carousel was tackled, and so 17th of January. So the camera crew, Granada, came in and filmed them, performing the track, but it was like the backing track, but obviously live vocals on a lot of these shots, and they did a lot of different shots of Graham doing the solo lead, vocal on a Carousel to start out the first lyrics of the song, and then you had the footage of the three guys, of course, Graham, Alan Clark, Tony Hicks, singing around the microphone with the harmonies just blending just beautifully, of course. I mean, some of the best footage you'll ever see of a pop rock band in the studio is the On a Carousel footage, which is on, of course, the DVD. Look Through Any Window, that DVD, the documentary of the Hollies. So check that out. It's from 2011. Check that out. Also on the 13th of January, the Lullaby to Tim was recorded. The warble vocal by Graham, of course, he had the idea for that. Alan, I think, was originally going to sing it, but Graham, definitely had a lot of influence over these sessions, so wanted to experiment. And around this, a little bit after, in between this and around the 21st of January, 22nd, they did a little, it was a bit of a tour in Europe and a TV show. Toss events. Apparently, again, that was the show. They did Have You Ever Loved Somebody and On a Carousel, and Have You Ever Loved Somebody was like an alternate mix. No fuzz guitar, well, just the little intro there, but it's really hardly any of that fuzz guitar in there. It's just like the bass going a lot, and yeah, it's the rhythm guitar. Interestingly enough, that mix didn't really have much, if hardly any, of that fuzz guitar sound. Which is kind of odd that they use that mix. And then there's On a Carousel, the mix of that song. So this was pretty soon after they recorded it, before it was, around, I would assume, I think before it was released or around that time. So they were promoting that single, and they chose Have You Ever Loved Somebody to perform. But then Bobby Elliott, drummer, of course, had appendix, had the appendicitis, swollen appendix around that time, and he had to get surgery. He nearly lost his life. The doctors pulled him through, and he pulled through. Really incredible. Of course, he made it through that. Because he was one of the great drummers of in music to me. I mean, certainly in that rock era, that pop rock, the '60s, '70s. I mean, one of the best drummers for sure. I mean, he's incredible. So, he got through that, but it took a while. He had to recuperate, so they had to get other drummers for the Evolution sessions and for touring as well. So Tony Newman, Tony Mansfield, some guys that were part of, I think, TV show and touring. They were as far as replacement drummers. 21st of February. Green Eyes, You Know Me, Babe. These are songs that supposedly the Hollies didn't even do. It's kind of rumored that did they, or these Hollies songs. A couple of the guys, Alan, Tony, and Bobby say, nah, these weren't Hollies songs. These were mislabeled. It was a mislabeled tape. So that's the info that's out there on those. And then the next day, though, confirmed for real, you got We're Alive, Kill Me Quick. Those songs were done 22nd of February. And that was a single in, obviously Italy. Did two overseas, It did two as well songs for a competition. This was unrelated to Evolution, but they did two songs. I'll show a picture on the screen of this. It was like a single put out, and they performed at the San Remo festival. I don't think much happened with those songs. They didn't really do anything in the competition. Like, they didn't advance. But there's those songs. But here, We're Alive, Kill Me Quick. Yeah, there was this movie, and it was pretty much the theme for the movie was Kill Me Quick, and then We're Alive. And you got Schoolgirl, unreleased song by Graham Golden, was recorded, and then The Games We Play. This was the closer on Evolution, of course, the last song on this album, and so a song that obviously has very sexual themes and teenage themes, of course, and they're kind of the parents are naive to what's going on in the house. That's for sure. I'll tell you, that's quite a song. That's a very naughty song. And I love the songs on this album it's a bold album, the Hollies, they'd never been more bold up to this point for certain, because it's a great album and very adventurous pop, and folk rock. And then you got this album, more psychedelia and stuff like that, and freakbeat and pop and stuff like, we got the harpsichord on, of course, Toffee Shop, So you got some classical, and again, the classical stuff, and we're going to get into that as well. Classical arrangements, in backing, overdubs is what I meant to say. So the overdubs on a lot of songs we're going to talk about. You got Baroque, classical sounds, which is really great. But with this song, Games We Play, you have the orchestra, you have the orchestration, and they performed it live quite a bit on the BBC and Hollywood, of course, at the Whiskey, with that famous Valentine's 1968 Whiskey show. And for that, it was Carrie Ann, of course, Carrie Ann. They had, their backing track, the bass and all that, and the orchestra, of course, for this song, Games We Play, and for Carrie Ann, you had the bass and the, of course, the steel drums, playing, it was timed, and they had to time it when to play that tape or whatever. So that was quite advanced for that time period. Anyway, so for February 22nd, Mitch Mitchell played the drums on these songs. Talk quickly. We're going to talk the Games We Play, of course, and Carrie Ann were performed live on BBC and also at the Whiskey Go Go for Valentine's '68. That's a famous show with everybody was there. Everybody. You just look at it. Everybody. The Monkees, Buffalo Springfield, Mama Cass, Crosby. Stills, the Buffalo Springfield. Yeah, everybody. Yeah, Neil Young. Little Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. That's the first time they were all in one place together. Those four guys. That was that night. They had a separate, recording of just the steel drum carry on or the bass or just the orchestra. And came in and that was synced up to play at the right time and when it came in the middle section, the middle eight. So that was quite innovative for 68, for 67 or 8 for that time period. So Mitch Mitchell, yes, played drums on those songs. 3rd of March, Leave Me, Rain on the Window, Then the Heartaches Begin, Ye Old Toffee Shop, You Need Love, Stop Right There, and Step Inside were all recorded on 3rd of March. Were put down the main tracks, the backing tracks or whatever, and Step Inside, a great song, but ended up being on Butterfly. So the Hollies sound right there, and again, those guys were they were just incredible they were just at an incredibly high level from the fall 66 to the fall 67. Wrote 3 albums worth, of all original material, and there weren't many at a higher level than Clark Hicks and Nash at that time. There weren't many songwriting teams at a higher level, that's for sure. There's no doubt about it. They wrote, high quality albums. I mean, you just listen to the music. That's all you got to do. So, Rain on the Window, a very ambitious song of friendship turned into a night of romance and love making, and then it ruined their relationship. So that's quite a deep song. Then the Heartaches Begin, very dark, very hopeless song. I mean, this is my favorite song on the album because it's so evoking of emotions of it's just the themes of emptiness, the themes of loneliness and all that, and despair. So very relatable. So killer guitar work, killer bass. I mean, it's just perfect. I don't know. It's my favorite song on the album. Again, is it the best? It's up there, man. I mean, if I was to rank them, it'd be in the top 3 for sure. Ye Old Toffee Shop, whimsical, baroque sounding with the harpsichord. Just throwback back to Clark and Nash in their youth, and being a candy shop, That's what that's all about. And then You Need Love, jangly guitar sound, the Byrds sounding, it's kind of Byrds-ish, but the Hollies really just with the incredible, and again, Tony Hicks, great guitar work here, and just love the vibrant sound. It's just one of the best songs. This song is just it soars, and just listen to Summer of '69 by Bryan Adams. It kind of has a riff that sounds like the opening riff of You Need Love, just food for thought there. And then Stop Right There, Graham's song about his failing marriage at the time. And you could say that for Heading for a Fall as well. It sounds like it was written about that relationship, maybe, and certainly Stop Right There was written about that relationship, and it's a dark song, no undoubtedly. So, the 8th of March, the Games We Play was finished, plus Head for a Fall, Water in the Brain, those songs were tackled. Dougie Wright on drums, and Elton John rumored to be on this album a little bit, but that's not official. 17th of March, overdubs for Rain on the Window, Then the Heartaches Begin, Toffee Shop, You Need Love, Stop Right There, Water in the Brain, and Heading for a Fall. All of them. Overdubs on all those songs. And then She's Leaving Home from the Beatles was next door the same day. And they got a listen, apparently, the Hollies did. And they think that happened. The Beatles, they came into Hollies sessions. The Hollies wanted the Beatles. That happened back in the day. And there was, again, the best term I can come up with is cross-pollination. That's right. That's one of the best terms you could say. And there was, I don't know. You can't just say, oh, the Hollies, it was all, they heard the Beatles and we got to do this, Like, it was just, pop in and Beatles pop in, and Hollies will pop in each other's Abbey Road session. They were in the same studio all the time, a lot of times they were in the studio at the same time. So, there's that. But, definitely some, who knows? You can't say, it's hard to say. We weren't there, so how can we know exactly, what played out? But we do know about that, that they visited that session, the She's Leaving Home, and earlier on, of course, the trumpet part for Penny Lane, a song, just a single, again, not a Sgt. Pepper. The trumpet part was being done the same day as the Hollies were filmed in Abbey Road. So, Carousel. So 3rd of April, Step Inside, completed, but again, unreleased, this version. Carry On, Signs They'll Never Change, 1st and 2nd of May. Of course, Carrie Ann is on the U.S. Evolution album, so I want to mention that. So that's when that was recorded as well. So obviously a great single, and you got 2 singles around this first half of the year for the Hollies. 2 singles, Carousel, Carrie Ann, with those 2 great the B-side. Signs Will Never Change, a great song about the seasons, and a darker song, just like the previous B-side. Has I don't know, dark. It's more ethereal, certainly All the World Is Love, ethereal song. As I said earlier, the same clothes, that the full design that the Hollies wore on the Evolution album cover right here, they performed on the Morecambe and Wise show, and they performed on a Carousel and Stop, Stop, Stop. Early, and this was like, earlier '67, again, before Bobby Elliott went out with his illness. This was earlier in 1967. It was January, February. It was earlier in the year. It was 1967, of course, in that first half of the year. So the same clothes, and so it was around the same time. They had the same haircuts. Alan Clark had the shorter haircut, and was it the same day? I don't know. It was certainly around the same time. There's no doubt about that. Same clothes, same look, as far as just their look, their haircuts, and just everything. 1st of June, 1967, the same day Sgt. Pepper was released, Evolution was released, and it was number 13 in the UK on the charts there. The US, it was not as successful. It wasn't even in the top 40 albums, It was a bit lower. I don't know if it was in the 40s or 50s. It didn't have the same success in the US, unfortunately. But 13 was a solid position in the UK charts, and Kenny Everett, Radio Caroline, album of the week it was for him. And the Hollies are one of the best 60s bands and into the 70s, and they had it all, really. They had everything you could want in a band. Alan Clark, the lead singer, one of the best lead singers of that era, obviously. Graham, his vocals were incredible, I don't know if anyone could sing better than him with harmony. I mean, as far as high harmony, this guy could do anything, Bobby Elliott on the drums, a virtuoso, and Tony on guitar, on lead guitar, of course, a virtuoso guitar player. I mean, these guys. And then, as far as this era of the Hollies we're talking about, Bernie Calvert was a solid bass player for a long time with the Hollies. And we're going to get into more Hollies for sure. That's my, what I want to start with. But there's going to be more bands, but I'm starting with the Hollies because, that's what I want to do first. That's just what I feel like. I just have the urge to do these videos about this band. There's not enough videos out there about the Hollies. So, again, that's where I'm at on what I'm up to doing with this channel right now. Again, an earlier mention about Tony Newman, Tony Mansfield appearing with the Hollies as drummers, replacement drummers. This was like around March, package tour. They did a package tour, so all the session info and kind of the making of the album. And again, for me, I want to get the mono pressings. I've just heard the stereo on vinyl. I want to hear mono. Much better listen on vinyl than online, in my opinion. Even though you can listen online, but vinyl much preferred. And again, the mixes certainly could use an update. It was like 1999 for a lot of these songs. I mean, some Hollies songs were 2003, 2011. There were some remixes. All the World Is Love, like, was a 2011 remaster, But it would be awesome if they did a reissue of this album, or a deluxe. It's unfortunate to me how the Hollies don't get that attention, for new releases, or for, deluxe this or that. Beatles, there's a gazillion amount of that. There's a ton of that. And then same for all other bands get reissues. A lot of different bands. I don't know if you're talking about the Monkees, you're talking about Kinks, the Beach Boys, of course. Bands like that get these re-releases, and it's a shame the Hollies don't. They got Sundays and stuff like re-releases. That was a long time ago. That was in the 90s, right? They haven't had a proper release in a long time, a reissue. So there was a 2016 issue of Evolution, like mono and stereo, But of course, EMI has been reissues over the years for a lot of Hollies stuff. The Hollies had the publishing deal, Gralto, then Alto. Then it was they broke that up and had individual stuff with their publishing after, when you had Terry Sylvester come in and all that, and in the 70s it was different. But yeah, definitely check out this album. This album is to me, one of the best albums of the 60s. And these Hollies albums in the 60s, especially for Certain Because Evolution Butterfly, are some of the better pop albums you're ever going to hear, in my opinion. And just also the books. So I recommend highly Elevated Observations by Peter Chexfield. This is a very informative book. These are great sources of Hollies info, and Riding the Carousel. Obviously, another great Hollies book by Riding the Carousel by Malcolm Searles. And this is the best Hollies, of course, bio. It's really the only official one that has everything. And then there's other books from the Hollies, but those are the two that are great sources for me and for other people. And the Hollies Elevated Observations, blog or forum is a great source as well to check out. And so I definitely credit them. I'm on that forum and bought these books, so definitely check out all that by the Hollies. And the Hollies are due for some credit, and I definitely want to give these albums some attention. So you're gonna see more from the Hollies. You're gonna see more from other bands from videos like this. So thanks for watching, guys.